You are now watching, or listening to, Smacking Off the podcast. If you love it, tell your friends about it. If you hate it, share it with your enemies.
It was just a small gift from Mummy and Daddy. One, however, that would spark a bit of an obsession. It started out innocent enough, as these things always do, but quickly lit the fuse to something bigger. Mum and Dad encouraged other activities, but alas, had to sell things almost as fast as they bought them. Friends and family thought it was cute. It's just a bit of fun, they said. It's just a phase, they said. Well, it's all fun and games until your child is 34, still lives at home, and absolutely nothing has changed. These things should really come with a warning label. Buy, sell, eBay.
Support Smacking Off by commenting on, liking, and sharing our videos. Stay right where you are, more Smacking Off is headed your way.
I just received a marketing plan from a freelancer on Fiverr. It's great. And the way I'll present it, will really take it to the next level.
Check it out.
Skills.
We're developing that with a freelancer, and it's excellent. It's probably my feedback that made it so good.
And you know who came up with the idea to use Fiverr? Liam. And who hired Liam? Me. Just to be clear.
You are now streaming Smacking Off the podcast. You can keep up with our current activity on Facebook at Smacking Off or Smackologists. Find us on YouTube at Smacking Off the podcast. And stay right where you are. More Smacking Off the podcast is headed your way.
Hey, this is Kyle Golick of the Smacking Off the podcast. I'm at the Basketball Hall of Fame. You don't need to come to Springfield, Massachusetts. We got our own Hall of Fame analyst in Dr. Balls.
Dr. Balls is a presentation of Smacking Off the podcast.
And now,
Dr. Balls.
What's going on, guys?
What's up?
What's up?
hey,
Welcome to Smacking Off the podcast, guys. And we're here with our producer, Doug Phillips. And then we got Sean Devine and Mr. Ed Scrivener, our key contributor.
And we've got a UConn Huskies national champions.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if anybody could have beat those guys here at the end of the season.
No, they looked real good, man. I'll tell you what, I was on them all season long. One of the things that caught my eye about them was the fact that they were prepared so early. If you compare them to Calipari and his teams, UConn came into the early season tournaments well prepared and just build on that instead of putting a team chemistry together throughout the season. They were ready early, and it paid off. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it. It looked for
of their scoring from last year. So what Hurley did was incredible.
Yeah, it was a great coaching job to put a team together and have them gel early and then go on to become championship caliber with losses. The only losses they had in the regular season were teams like Creighton that shot historic numbers from three. So hats off.
It was very similar to me to Purdue and Tennessee, just watching it. And when I say similar, not the game style, but you could just tell that Tennessee wasn't going to be able to do enough, and you kind of got that sense with Purdue and Connecticut. I did in the first half.
Yeah, just their guards.
Here's a fun fact.
3-pointer.
You took the word right. They were the number one 3-point shooting team by percentage this whole year. They took 7 and made 1.
Yep.
And that's the difference in the game. And Hurley said, I think we were willing to give Edey 50 points in the paint, 2-point buckets. They were not going to make 3-pointers on us.
Yeah, nobody else did anything.
Yeah, and nobody else. Yeah,
that's classic Adolph Rupp strategy right there. I mean, he let Pistol Pete get off and shut the rest of the team down. You know,
we saw Wisconsin do that to Purdue in the Big Ten tournament. Edey got his. The rest of the Purdue players, they didn't get theirs. And another interesting this year, UConn's run compared to last year's in the tournament. Their average, winning score was a 20-point win in last year's tournament. This year it was 23 points was the average margin.
Biggest margin ever.
It's insane. It's nuts. Also all you can say is Hurley was right in his press conference from 2020. You got to get us back then because we're coming, and they're here now, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time. He's got that program really rocking and rolling.
So we've got to start talking historic proportions then. If you compare this to the last back-to-back team, those Florida teams were great, but they didn't dominate in that fashion. They had to scrap for it, and they had kind of gritty players, and they didn't really dominate, but they won through incredible effort, whereas I'm just seeing UConn being so well polished. So I couldn't really point to any one guy on UConn as being some kind of transcendent player that we'll remember forever, but I can point to the team as a transcendent team that was truly dominant.
Well, Florida brought back their entire starting five with the intention of winning it again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Hurley had to
absolutely.
replace 3 guys from last year's team.
Yeah, the three main guys. And then
Yes,
Cleveland.
Sonogo and drawing a blank on the other 2 gentlemen.
But they're all in the NBA.
Yeah, they're all, yeah.
They're all in the NBA. And then you look at Klingon, it's similar to the 1998 Kentucky team, and that the guys that were reserves on the previous team won the national championship with the next team. Only Kentucky didn't go back to back. They went to the final game in '97. But all those guys graduated, went to the NBA, and then key role players stepped up.
Yeah, Klingon averaged 10 minutes a game last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that helped him get ready for this year to be the main guy.
Absolutely. So Danny Hurley, man, I mean, hats off. He's able to make guys stay at least long enough to where they can reach their dreams, and then the program can reach their dreams too. So I think that the entire tournament this year refused any talk of one and done. I mean, if you look at the teams, almost all of them had experienced players on them when you got into the Final Four. Now, there were some transfer teams or teams that were loaded from the transfer, but they didn't win. And then Alabama, I don't know how many of those players are going to stay, but if they do stay, it'll be yet more proof that if they stay, that you can win championships. And those guys can improve their draft stock.
Oh, I think Alabama, if they get their guys to stay, they'll be right in the thick of it next year. Absolutely. Along with that top 5 recruiting class they got. But you mentioned one of the teams that they didn't win it, but they got pretty far, that had a lot of transfer portal, was NC State. They really used the heck out of the transfer portal in it. And
I agree.
It took them all season to gel, but once they did, they made a pretty valiant effort and run.
So that's our future, guys. I mean, we've seen it in the Final Four.
Shoot against Purdue.
Yeah.
But there are different. The cool thing about it, I think, is there are different ways to build a team that can get you to where you want to go.
So, real quick, Bob, why don't you let us in on what's going on at Kentucky and why did Calipari decide to go ahead and leave?
I think it was Calipari's pride. I think he felt damaged. Obviously the fans aren't behind him, and he felt damaged and personally hurt because he's a big ego guy. Right? The fans would turn on him, and they just wouldn't listen to his bullshit anymore. And I think he's feeling vindictive about it, because why else would you sign with Arkansas, a team that was a serious rival with Kentucky, at least in the 90s and early 2000s, right? Yeah. So that's kind of a Rick Pitino style move to go coach Louisville. But as far as the coaching start goes, right after the national championship, Danny Hurley said he's out of it. Right? Somebody gave him a question at the press conference and asked him if he heard about certain coaching positions, and he says, I'm out of it. And then Jay Wright said later on in the broadcast that he was out of it, just like Sean brought that to my attention again. I'm glad he mentioned it to bring it to our attention. And then there's some other candidates out there, and somebody mentioned Mark Pope, right? And when we were chatting earlier, and some of those other candidates are sexier, but I've been really thinking about it, and I thought about him before. Mark Pope would be an excellent selection if they give him time. It could be like John Pelfrey at Alabama, where he either couldn't do nothing with the time or he didn't get enough time. But I think that Mark Pope will be a good hire for Kentucky.
They can probably get him.
I got a kick out of somebody mentioning Pitino's son as a candidate. I definitely don't think that that would be a thing. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, I don't think he's ready.
Pitino or his son?
Yeah, if you're talking about
they said Richard Pitino.
Yeah.
His record at Minnesota wasn't good enough to warrant that.
I don't think he's got enough time as a head coach to be ready for a program like Kentucky. I want to see him do more at New Mexico, and they won the Mountain West Conference tournament this year. They unfortunately lost to Clemson, but that's not a bad loss in the first round of the tournament because we saw how far Clemson went. But I just like to see Richard Pitino do a little bit more before he he gets a caliber gig like Kentucky. And not to say that he might not. He might in the future, but I just don't see it right now. But I think Mark Pope would be an excellent choice with what he's done at BYU.
Yeah, that would be a good choice.
So, did we lose Doug or Bob?
No, y'all hear
You
me?
still there? I got you. Okay, maybe we lost Bob.
Bob. Yeah, Bob's froze.
He's gonna.
He's got the same look on his face at all times. Yeah, I'm trying to I was trying. Go ahead.
I'll throw this out to you guys, and let's see a little trivia question here while we're waiting for Bob to rejoin us. Because Doug, you've done this for college football, so I'm gonna turn it a little bit and do it for basketball. Can you guys name the 7 active head coaches with a national championship?
In college
Hurley,
basketball.
College basketball.
Hurley, Calipari.
Yep, that's 2.
I mean those are 2 easy ones. Bill Self.
Yep.
So what was the question?
You don't get to play, Bob, because you'll answer this. Name the 7 active head coaches in college basketball with a national championship. So Ed's got Hurley, he's got Calipari, he's got Bill Self. That's 3. 4 to go.
Oh, Izzo.
Yep, that's 4. Doug, you want to help him out? You got anything?
I don't have anything, guys. I'm trying to figure out how to get Bob back on the screen, but
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
we
you.
just can't
Bob.
get you on the screen.
Oh goodness, I don't know.
Ed, you throwing in the towel?
No, I'm just trying to go through process of elimination here, but I know we only have an hour, so I might not get them.
All right, so you have Hurley, you have Calipari, you have Bill Self, and you have Tom Izzo. One we just mentioned, Rick Pitino. He's at St. John's. That's 5. And then the other 2 are very recent. So think the last 6 years of the tournament.
Jesus. Are these active college coaches?
Yeah, they're both still at the schools.
Kevin Ollie doesn't count.
Nope. Last 6 years. One of them is a candidate for the Kentucky job.
The suspense is killing me. You got to tell us, guys.
All right, it's Scott Drew at Baylor.
Yeah.
And then Tony Bennett at Virginia. Those are the 7 active coaches with a national championship.
So Scott Drew makes a lot of sense if you're thinking about somebody they pursue. And then Mark Pope, I think the fans would give him a chance, right? And then you look at the other coaches that are out there. They're probably trying to go after Nate Ocean, but he just signed a big extension.
And he already withdrew his name from consideration.
Right. I mean, so
the only other guy I could think of, depending how you feel about age, but Kelvin Sampson at Houston is a viable candidate.
It would be weird seeing Kentucky play that style of basketball.
I don't know about that.
It'd be like Pitino in the 90s where they pressed all game long. Of course, they wouldn't bomb it. I mean, they might still bomb it some. That's what I think is interesting about Scott Drew. Now, I don't know about Brad Stevens and Billy Donovan. I think that those, I don't know how realistic they are, but nobody's ruled them out yet.
Right.
The fans really love Billy Donovan, guys. I can't stress to you enough how much the fans want Billy Donovan, right?
Hard ass to get a guy out of the NBA, though, particularly when his NBA team has made the playoffs.
Also, they did win the play-in. It's the play-in. I figured it would hinge on what happened in their play-in game.
if they win their play-in and they make the actual NBA, the final 8 for the conference, I don't think you're getting Billy Donovan. At least not this year.
That's what I believe as well. Is that they wouldn't be able to get him, but if he lost the play-in, then I believe that it would be possible. But
he's well loved by Bulls fans and Bulls management. So I mean,
they're hanging in there without Levine.
Yeah, I mean that's even more incredible that they're battling and they don't have a lot of their guys. Their guys are hurt. Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine are hurt. That just tells you how great of a coach he is. I mean, he would be a perfect fit for the Wildcats. So I see why Big Blue Nation wants him. But you gotta get this thing going because we're in the transfer portal right now. We're getting close to National Signing Day, so it's. And I think I just saw a Kentucky player entered the portal today, didn't I, Bob?
Yeah, and I think it was Edwards, and I think he's following Calipari to Arkansas. Actually,
I don't think Arkansas is a bad spot, but I get why it's bad blood for you, Bob. I mean, yeah, I remember those '90s rivalries with Arkansas and Kentucky for sure.
And Nolan Richardson, he was a great coach. He's so overlooked; it's just criminal.
Absolutely underrated as one of the greatest college coaches of all time. Nolan Richardson is
there could be a couple other guys following Coach Cal.
What's got in mind there, Ed?
I just think that it's a possibility that a couple more guys could go with him.
Oh yeah, I absolutely believe that. But the last time that we had a drought on the bench, what happened is that the local Kentucky players who never got out of their jumpsuit became a team that took Duke to the limit in the Elite Eight.
I remember that team. Yep.
Yes. So what happens is Calipari has he only recruits the token local player, and we have our own brand of basketball in Kentucky that's very successful. It travels, trust me, it's traveled everywhere I went. Right.
That game between Kentucky and Duke is still probably one of my, if not my favorite, one of my favorite games of all time, of all the college basketball I've been watching. It's right up there with that the Gonzaga buzzer beater to beat UCLA a couple years. That game was great too.
Yeah, those are good games.
Well, how often do you see a guy score 30 points and not miss a single shot?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a game winner.
But
speaking of coaching, Michigan's got their guy now, right? They got their guy,
Dusty May. Yeah,
Dusty May. How is that? Have they done the press conference? How's that running?
I mean, they've done the press conference. It's very well. He's been very well received. I don't think they've gotten anybody from the portal yet, but they're talking to a lot of guys.
There are I think I read that this current portal has more players in it than the last few iterations of the portal. Like there are so many guys right now looking for new places to play ball.
Oh yeah.
It looks very promising. They're going to get the 7-footer from Yale.
Damn.
That'd be a great get. That would be a great get for Michigan, for sure. So I think the one thing after last night that we can put to bed is because there was a little argument about it last year, but now it's absolutely put to bed. UConn is now a blue blood, period.
Oh, yeah. Now, we already felt that way, but now the rest of the world's just going to suck it up and take it,
Right. Absolutely.
What number is this?
This is 6. They're tied with North Carolina.
They were blue blood at 5, though.
We thought they were.
Calhoun got 3?
Yes.
What's the line you got to cross to become a blue blood? Is it defined?
Technically, it's 5. The only one that doesn't have 5, but they have so many other things going for them in the history of basketball.
Kansas
is Kansas with 4.
Yeah.
but to become a new member, you got to hit 5.
So what was the issue with people that didn't think UConn was there? Was it because so many of them come so fast?
Right, because it's been in such a I guess the closest example we could make in college football would be the Miami Hurricanes run. Yeah.
Yeah, because UConn was not a power until the 90s.
Right. And then they were fighting hard in the Big East in the 80s to come up, and it didn't really materialize until the 90s. And then
because it was Georgetown, St. John's, Villanova, and Syracuse.
Seton Hall was good in those days.
In Syracuse.
In Syracuse. But I think the run is similar to UCLA's, except for the end of it, right? So the thing with UCLA is being an all-time blue blood program, which they are, is that they didn't really do anything before the run, and they didn't do much after. Whereas with UConn, it's built so well, it don't matter who the coach is.
Right. So let's run down. I'll run down most recent to last with the blue bloods. So the most recent, obviously, is Connecticut. They just won last night, 2024. North Carolina is next, or excuse me, Kansas is next. They won in 2022. Then North Carolina in 2017. Then Duke in 2015. Kentucky then in 2012. And then we have our two kind of long cases. And that's UCLA. Their last one came in 1995.
Yeah.
And then Indiana in 1987.
In 87.
You know, so, and I'll give you 4 programs that are on the cusp, since we're talking blue bloods. Villanova has 3, and their last was 2018. Louisville, depending on how you feel about the NCAA, which I think all of us here don't really care for the NCAA. So I give Louisville credit for 3, because we saw the games. They won in 2013. They're sitting at 3. I know it was vacated, but, you know, we saw the games. They won the games. So I got them at 3. And then I have 2 at 2 that have such a great tradition that I think they'll eventually get through. There are more with 2, but these 2 kind of stuck out. And that's Michigan State with 2, their last one in 2000. They lost the championship game in 2009. And then NC State, their last one, I know it's 83, but they had a good run this year. They've had good teams throughout the years. So those 4 are kind of on my cusp. Now, there are a total of 7 teams with at least 2, but a few of them are likely not ever going to win another one. One of those being San Francisco, who got their 2 in the 50s with Bill Russell. And then there are 22 programs with at least 1 national championship, just 1. Your Michigan Wolverines is part of that group there, Ed.
Yeah, with Glenn Rice.
And then I think you guys, those 4 teams that for all their NCAA tournament wins, they still don't have a championship. We're talking Purdue, Gonzaga, Illinois, Oklahoma. I know Alabama wasn't on those 4, but they're definitely high up. Alabama has a lot of tournament wins. And we kind of discussed, I think we'll see in the next 10, 15 years, Alabama win a national championship, at least 1. And I don't think Matt Painter is going anywhere at Purdue, so I expect Purdue to eventually break through. Your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, Purdue could do it. And they were so close this year, and they just, I mean, the tournament's so tough to win, guys. I mean, you get to catch so many breaks. And it's sad to say, but obviously UConn was a better team, and they had better guards. And he's just going to have to find depth, and then Edie's going somewhere. I mean, he's not staying another year, so what are they going to do next year? But it is possible. Matt Painter's been a great coach. He's been a consistent recruiter, and they definitely have a chance. And then as far as NC State, I find them interesting. Hell, what a run! I mean, they was going to fire the coach, right?
He ain't getting fired now. In fact, he got a bonus.
Right. I mean, he went from, if they didn't win the ACC tournament, he was gone, to now he's got a bonus. And I find that interesting.
I think you have to like Oates' odds of winning one because
Yeah.
he's such a good coach.
Let's get back to that real quick before we talk about Coach Oates, who's, I mean, we've lauded Coach Oates, and I think he's going to continue to do great things at Alabama for sure. But the coach at NC State, whose name is escaping me, I got to pull it up. But if you look at
Kevin Keats or something like that.
Yeah, if you look at it right now, on as far as resume, I think he's done more than his adversaries, John Shire at Duke and Hubert Davis at North Carolina.
That's ironic, isn't it? And but Hubert Davis, I thought he'd done a decent coaching job of what he had, but as far as Shire goes and Duke, they showed glimpses of being the real Duke, but I just don't know. I don't know if he's the guy that's going to sustain that level.
Big third year for Shire next year, because he's probably going to bring back most of this team, and he's got currently the #1 recruiting class in the country. So next year's a kind of a big make or break year for Shire at Duke.
I mean, the jury's out on him and Hubert Davis just because they haven't been around that long.
Right. And you talk about these programs. Kentucky's another one. Obviously, they got to find their coach, but it's a win now. It's not we'll give you 4, 5, 6 years. It's we better see immediate results.
Yeah. No, Kentucky, I think if they hire Pope, they'll give him some leash, right? But if they hire Scott Drew, they'll expect results off the bat. And that's a point I was wanting to make about the difference between Rick Pitino and Calipari. Rick Pitino can win with whatever players he had, and he would coach them to execute what he was doing and make it a winning style.
Bear Bryant philosophy of basketball.
Right. Whereas
I don't care what players I got, they better do what I want them to do and execute.
Exactly. So he was able to take
the Bear won with all types of players, sizes, schemes. That's what made him such an outstanding coach. I mean, when he scrapped the pro style and went with the wishbone, he won championships with the wishbone. So
and another thing he did is he kept the media out of the practices, and nobody knew they were going to run it until they ran the first fucking play.
And then they ran it all the way down USC's throat for I think 560 rushing yards.
Yeah, it was still a good game though, wasn't it? That one was like 17-10, wasn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's a great point. Pitino could take whatever players that were on the roster and make a system work with those players. Cal always needed better and better and better NBA talent, and it seemed like he never really came up with a style that fit, I mean, because it wasn't for a lack of talent, Bob,
No, they had talent all the way down the line, man. Some of the best talent, of all time, even by Kentucky recruiting standards. And he never did make a cohesive team. And we're always talking, as long as we've done this show and talked about this, we're always talking about in February. Is he going to have them come together by March or in January? You say, wow, I mean, they don't look good. They're like, and they just weren't cohesive. And only in 2012, that's one of the greatest recruiting classes of all time. The guys that were in that game. I mean, Anthony Davis. I mean, my God, you had to win something. But now, even with players like that, I mean, he had probably the best point guard in the NCAA, Reed Shepherd. I mean, he had a returning player in Antonio Reeves. He's a great scorer. He had the top recruiting class all the way around in Dillingham and Edwards. And,
he had Shea Gilgeous-Alexander too.
Oh yeah.
And I'll give you a quick update from John Rothstein, who posted this on X. Billy Donovan tells reporters prior to tonight's Bulls-Knicks game that he has not been contacted by Kentucky, and he's committed to being in Chicago.
No. Well, since he's not a liar, we can take that one. There's a lot of them.
That's a non-denial denial.
Right. But what we
focused on tonight's game.
So I would say this is the last episode of Dr. Balls until the next basketball season, but we'll probably have to do a special episode when Kentucky hires a coach.
Oh, we can do that.
I think we should do that along with when they finish. So I think April 17th is signing day, so we'll know what classes are what. But just in the short term, what really sealed, Cal with Kentucky is, let's just look at the last 4 years. This year, you're eliminated by Oakland. Last year,
St. Peter's.
St. Peter's. Let's see. The year before was somebody else that
Kansas State, wasn't it?
Kansas State. And the year before that was he didn't make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and that was the COVID excuse year there, right?
I mean, so Bob, you don't have to tell us as a Kentucky fan.
No, that's unacceptable.
Those results are absolutely unacceptable to a place like Kentucky. Absolutely.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but when the season started, did you not say that Cal needed to get to the Final Four?
Yes.
And sadly, when we got close to the end of the season and Kentucky played some games where you go, wow, this is what that roster can really do. I in one of my throwaway brackets, for fun, I had Kentucky in the final. And in fact, I had them in the championship game against UConn because I thought that would be a heck of a fun game, considering all the talent on the court.
And that's the irritating thing to Kentucky fans is everybody knows that the talent is actually there for that to have happened. I mean, you didn't really make a wild prediction there, Sean.
It's easy to recruit at Kentucky. I mean, it is right now probably the bluest of the blue bloods simply because UCLA hasn't done anything in 35 years. And you look at that graphic I sent you guys. Cal has 3 overall number 1 picks during his tenure at Kentucky. He's got 15 lottery picks. And he had 40 guys drafted in the first round as a whole. So if you're a high school kid, you go, yeah, I can get to the NBA going to Kentucky.
Oh, definitely. And
but the problem is Kentucky fans don't care about, they could have 1 million lottery picks. They want to win national championships. And if you're looking at Cal's overall tenure, the 2012, that was just an incredible team. It was amazing. We knew they were going to win the national championship. But the rest of the time, you got to go, it was kind of a failure for all of that talent.
Yeah, I have to agree with that 100%. And that's why I go to coaches that can coach what they got. I mean, if you looked at, like I said, under Pitino, he had an occasional NBA high round pick. I mean, Antoine Walker. But in general, he had 2 or 3 blue chips and a bunch of guys that were really good and coached up, right? And if you go to Tubby Smith, never had very many blue chips, right? Maybe 2 I can think of, maybe 3. And you got guys that became good when they left, like Tayshaun Prince. But if you look at the results, Tubby Smith's results and Calipari's are very similar. And in my opinion, Smith's about to be better.
Bob, can you help me out? Because I'm having a mind fart right now. I think he won did Tubby Smith won 1 national title at Kentucky, correct?
Yeah, he took Pitino's bench in 98 from 97 and won the national championship. And then he had a chance to win the national championship in 2002 and 2003. Both those teams were well capable of winning a championship.
That's right. Yeah, I always think he won in 2002, but he didn't.
Yeah, but what happened was Steve Bogan's the only guy in the country capable of guarding Dwayne Wade, broke his ankle in practice going into the Marquette game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember now. Oh, that's a good memory on you, Bob.
So the best defender in the country, the best perimeter defender in the country, Keith Bogan, and one of the 3 blue chips signed by Tubby Smith, broke his ankle in practice leading into the Marquette game and tried to guard Dwayne Wade on a broken ankle.
You can't. You're not gonna do well with a healthy ankle, let alone a broken one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The guy was the lead defender, and he still was. Everybody alive was going to have problems with him, and that was a great Marquette team. But Tubby Smith had caught some bad breaks in the tournament in 2001, 2, and 3, and I thought in 2005 he might do something, but
I think Tubby Smith is a very underrated and underappreciated coach. He was really, really good.
I agree with that.
You know, I have nothing but good things to say, and he always ran good, clean programs. Always.
That's another thing is everybody in Kentucky still feels like that Calipari was dirty. I didn't agree with his hire. I don't think with the history of Kentucky and how we had been on probation in the late '80s, leading up into 1990, that we needed to hire a coach of Calipari's cheating record. At least of course, they try to beg that off and make excuses for it. But in my opinion, he was a dirty guy. And
but I don't think he was ever punished at Kentucky, right? Like
he never got caught at Kentucky, right? But he did at Memphis.
And
There's
UMass.
a cloud of suspicion that tends to follow him around.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. So I was worried about that in Kentucky. I didn't want us to be associated with that, and I didn't think it was necessary. And after Smith, they made one bet. They hired Billy Gillespie, who was a great defensive coach at Texas A&M, leading up to his hire in Kentucky, but it wasn't the right hire. And they hired Calipari, which was a flashy hire. And obviously, he was a great recruiter, and that's what they was looking for. But they missed the boat. They should have got the last 10 years of Dan Issel. They should have hired Dan Issel after Johnny Smith. They didn't do it. Right. And but under Calipari, we've been lucky. We've dodged the NCAA bullet. But if any allegations came out of what had happened while he was there and how he got all these guys, now I'm with you, Sean. I don't believe you have to cheat at Kentucky to get those kinds of players.
No. That's like the fools that during Nick Saban's time at Alabama, they're cheating. No, it's Alabama. They've been there since the beginning in football. You don't have to cheat at Alabama. There's plenty of great players that want to go play there because they'll go to the NFL. The same is true at Kentucky with the NBA, and it's salt from people who are jealous of the success.
That's right. And so it's when it's hip to play at a school, right? So there's ways for schools to recruit that aren't dirty. One of them is for the school to become hip. Like UConn has become hip. If you're from the New York City area or region,
I wanted to throw something out real quick that'll make Doug smile because he loves to get Georgia's goat. UConn's best player this year is from Georgia. And Georgia basketball, last I checked, they were still in the NIT tournament this year. So imagine if Georgia...
And they were improved, too.
Right, they were improved, and they still just went to the NIT. So imagine if Georgia, or even, another one that's down, obviously the ACC, but Georgia Tech, if you would keep your players in the state of Georgia, those could be some good basketball programs. The problem is you're overshadowed by, their football schools, and people don't really care about their basketball programs.
Well, Bobby Crimmins had a big following.
Bobby Crimmins did when he had Tech running, with Kenny Anderson and Dennis Scott. Those were some great teams.
Oh yeah, Stephon Marbury.
Yeah, but there's no after that. It was like a comet shooting through the night sky, and then it's gone. But there's no reason that Georgia Tech should be as bad as they are because there's so many great basketball players in the state of Georgia. I would argue the same.
Well, heck, look at Maryland not getting guys from DC.
Yes, unbelievable.
Neither's Georgetown, Ed.
I think Cooley might pull that off, though.
Keith Bogans was from DC. Now that you mention it,
I mean, those two that's another two. Those Ed makes a great point. But there's no excuse for Maryland and Georgetown to be bad like they are. There's a lot.
Georgetown made a good hire with Cooley. I'm not thrilled about the Kevin Willard hire at Maryland at all.
Now he was a Patino assistant, right? Kevin Willard, and he was on the bench along with Tubby Smith, and they were both assistants at the same time with Herb Sendek under Rick Pitino. And he was a assistant to Tubby Smith for a while at Kentucky as well. So he's at least well seasoned, but I haven't seen him as a head coach. He hasn't done anything that really turned me on.
Now, Bob, the only good thing I can say about Willard is that he wears nice suits.
He's a dapper Don. He wears very nice suits. His suit game is incredible. I
Yeah.
wish I had his suit game. Now, Bob, I've been giving you nothing but bad news tonight on the podcast about coaches who don't want to come to Kentucky. I'm gonna give you maybe good news, and I want you to tell me how you feel about them.
All right.
So far, Bruce Pearl at Auburn has not turned down the opportunity to go to Kentucky.
Well, Bruce Pearl, at least he's openly a crook, so that makes me consider him. And I felt if he had the kind of players that Calipari had, they'd have certainly went way further in the tournament, even though his style lends itself to you losing when you don't expect it, which is what happened to his team in the tournament. His team should have been, in my opinion, at least a Sweet 16 team, but the style of it depends so heavily on everything going right that it bit him in the ass. But I still like Bruce Pearl. He's an honest cheater, I guess you could say.
So you'd be okay with him coming to Lexington?
Well,
That's
I
his
think
dream
I
job.
don't know that I'd
He
love
said that's
it,
his dream job.
but it would be very entertaining, right? Very
And then the
entertaining.
other one that has not turned down is your rival, Rick Barnes at Tennessee has not.
We don't want him. We feel that he can't win.
Is he being mentioned?
No.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm messing with Bob a little bit.
Okay, so now Rick Barnes, that if you're a Kentucky fan, you have to say if you can't win the Natty with DJ Augustine and who's that one that's so great? He's at Phoenix now.
Kevin Durant.
Yeah, Kevin Durant. So you had a team with DJ Augustine and Kevin Durant. You couldn't go to the Final Four. I mean, my God.
Rick Barnes would not excite the fan base. I mean, you got Calipari, who's a large personality. Rick Barnes is not that. I think they'd look at that as a vanilla hire.
That's why Bruce Pearl's interesting because Bruce Pearl, it sounds like a New Yorker, right? And we have this thing for East Coast coaches.
I would say Kentucky loves bringing in guys from the New York, New England area.
Oh yeah. So I ain't against that. That's Billy Donovan, man. He's the prototypical New Englander.
Now
you know?
I'm gonna throw one from kind of left field out at you, Bob. Just, and it's way out of left field, but I know you know him and you kind of like him. What do you think about maybe pulling Mark Few from Gonzaga?
Oh man, you give that guy some talent, it'd be an interesting style, right? It'd be the up-tempo style that fans enjoy, right? And I think it could win there. And I actually thought he'd done his best coaching job this year, right?
Right, it's probably his least talented team got to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, he did a great coaching job this year. Now, Mark Few, I think he'd be great at Kentucky. I really do. It's just, and he seems to have the demeanor to put up with a lot of bullshit because you're the center of a lot of attention when you're the coach of Kentucky, right? And from all directions, and locally, it's off the hook. It's rabid, you know. So,
yeah, that's a good question. So, because you're in Kentucky, Bob, give our audience, like, when you listen to sports talk radio, which I would assume you do because you're on the road a lot, particularly in Kentucky, how much is Kentucky basketball discussed on your sports talk radio?
I'd say it's similar to the Chicago tabloids where the Bears or the Bulls are like 99% of the paper. You have to really search to find any other scores, you know?
Like so it's July in Kentucky, and you guys are talking Kentucky basketball.
And we're going deep into it, right? We're talking about the recruits we got. We're talking about recruits 2 years down the road, high school players we're looking at, summer tournaments we take like to the Bahamas and so forth, right? How guys are feeling. I mean, there's people running these guys down in the bars, like the hip joints, the other place, Linus, right? So these guys are trying to hang out in Lexus sometimes the off season, and they're like celebrities. They get run down everywhere. Kentucky Sports Radio, Matt Jones is on them every day of every weekday, all year round when they ain't on break. And then, but college football though has took it up a lot of our consciousness, right? And it's really become strong on the radio in particular. And starting now, right, they're really going to get on it. And the spring practice is off, and that has been over. It wasn't televised. But people are really going to want to know because we've been wanting to move up in football real bad, and we feel like now that we've reached a wall where we've gotten as far as we could under the present circumstances. right?
I think you guys would be able to bust through if you like right now, like as it's currently been constituted the last few years, your football. If you did, like, if you could time travel 99 Tim Couch to the current Kentucky teams.
Oh, that would have made a difference because these transfer quarterbacks were awful, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then so you're right. We got to have a homegrown talent that can actually play. That's the only way that's going to happen. That's been generational because otherwise, now I heard this, but I thought it might be bullshit, but I heard it from two different sports writers that are old school, cigar smoking, leather sitting, whiskey drinking guys that are real. I can't say what towns I don't want to give them up, but
You're old enough to remember, and you've done a lot of business in Chicago. You remember in the late '80s, early '90s on it used to be called Sports Channel, right?
Yeah.
You had the sport. They had that show called The Sports Writers, and they either wrote for
Oh
the
yeah, I love this
Tribune.
show.
They're all sitting there smoking cigars, drinking beer.
Yeah.
You remember that? Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of guys we're talking about. I know a few of them guys, and not to give him up, but one of them's in West Virginia and one of them's in Kentucky, and they know each other, right? And one of them's a beat writer for UK. And I talk to these guys. I don't ever want to give them up, but
don't do that. Don't do that.
But they say both of these guys told me individually that when Liam Cohen came back as the offensive coordinator to Kentucky, that Arch Manning considered Kentucky in the transfer portal.
Wow. That's it's very funny to me that he I know we diverted a little bit from basketball to football real quick, but it's funny that he really never gave what I considered, and Doug might have some more knowledge on this, but didn't seem like he gave Ole Miss really any time of day.
No, I mean he really didn't.
Which
I don't remember Ole Miss coming up as a serious contender for Arch Manning at any time.
Right, and his dad went there because he's the son of Cooper. Dad went there. You know, your one uncle Eli went there, and then your grandfather is a legend there. And he didn't give him, but a cup of coffee and said, "Yeah, no thanks." So that
he wanted to make his own mark and sit on the bench.
Yeah, well, yeah, and Texas really didn't. That kind of surprised. Why would you want to go sit on the bench when your other uncle Peyton was a true freshman at Tennessee? He's a. I think the jury is still out on him that he's ever really.
That's what I was going to say.
That he may not be.
There's a lot of people that don't think he's that good.
He might not pan out.
Well, Ewers was not a lock to win the job last year. He went out there and won it.
Yeah, that's probably what it was, Ed.
But now it's his because he took the team to the college football playoff. That's his team.
Oh, he's got the job now, but I'm saying before the season started last year, when they were going through spring ball and everything, it was not a done deal that Ewers was going to start.
Right.
So
he won it. It probably dissuaded Manning from staying. He said, "Well, this guy won the job. He's going to be here at least another year. I got to play somewhere." Now, where did he end up signing at in the transfer portal?
Who's that?
Arch Manning.
No, I think he's still there at Texas.
Oh, he's in the portal though. He was in the portal.
I didn't see him. I haven't seen him sign anywhere. I think he's still gonna.
He's still there.
I mean, there's a lot of teams that would certainly be happy to welcome his services, but I'm sure he's got a very good NIL deal to stay there in Austin. And if you don't pan out, but you're still in Austin, that's not a bad place to be the backup quarterback at, in Austin, Texas. That's a great place. But man, that would have been interesting to see him in Kentucky. That would have been cool. Because I always love kind of and don't take any disrespect to this, Bob, but to me, as great as Kentucky is in basketball, they're a monster. They're a power. They're the kind of the opposite in football. They're kind of the underdog story.
Our joke is the only reason that Kentucky isn't the worst all-time college football program is because Indiana is.
Well, you got Vanderbilt.
I'm telling you right now.
You got Vanderbilt right down the road.
I'm telling you right now, look out for Indiana.
Oh, I think they're going to be good
Indiana
too.
football or Indiana basketball, Ed?
Football.
Oh,
Really?
I think you're pulling the viewers' legs.
No.
That's what you're doing. You're
Their new
gaslighting
head
us, Ed.
coach.
You're gaslighting us.
Their new head coach has some chops. First of all, he's run Kirk Ignetti. He's won everywhere he's been. And when he was interviewed, and they asked him, "What do you say to prospective recruits?" He says, "I tell them, Google me, I win." So that's the kind of brash attitude a team like that needs.
And
We
then
like that.
and then people recruiting against him go Google Indiana football.
Okay, so Bob, it was
I
talked
didn't say
about.
they were going to win the Natty. I said they're going to be better.
Do you think they'll ever win the Big Ten?
Ever is a long time. Not for me because I'm old, but in general.
Especially considering, and that's something we need to talk about for basketball too. We've talked a little football, but let's talk basketball going next fall. And go ahead, Doug, if you got an answer on that, Arch Manning.
Oh yeah, it was discussed. It hit the news that he might enter the transfer portal, and it was back in January, but he never actually did it.
Oh, that's what
He never pulled it.
guys.
Didn't pull the trigger. Okay. Yeah, I heard it was some scuttlebutt. There was a little smoke, but there wasn't really fire.
LSU had him. They already had a uniform for him.
LSU's got a uniform for everybody that they hear might go in the transfer portal.
There you go.
But let's talk. We got conference realignment coming, gentlemen. So let's start with Ed. Big Ten basketball next year. You welcome in Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. How do you think that's going to fit into the Big Ten footprint, and what do you see happening next fall with basketball?
Well, USC is sort of a question mark. I would expect UCLA to rebound because Cronin's a very good coach. So this past year was a little bit of an anomaly. Oregon is always going to be dangerous with Altman coaching them.
I agree.
And
can you believe the run they went on?
Good 1 year, bad the next.
Can you believe the run Dana Altman went? There was talk that he was going to get canned as well, similar to the NC State coach. And they went on a run. They won the Pac-12 tournament, got into the dance. They won their game in a game that a lot of people didn't think they were going to win against South Carolina. They won that game, and they lost in double overtime to Mike Creighton in a game that I thought we might lose because Oregon was good. Do you think Oregon could potentially challenge to win the Big Ten championship next year?
Ooh, because
we know they got the money in the transfer portal with it being Nike University.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it'll be tough to win it. They'll be competitive. But they'd be crazy to fire Altman.
Yeah,
right. I agree. Now, regardless of the new teams entering, let's look at the Big Ten next year because this is our last show. We got to give the viewers a little way too early. Give us a dark horse that you think could win the Big Ten next year in basketball.
Ohio State, and I hate it. It just kills me to say it.
Oh, that's gotta hurt you, Ed. Oh,
I do think my guys will be back in the tournament.
You think Michigan will make the tournament next year?
Yes.
Oh, we're gonna have to get offline and maybe make a wager.
Oh yeah, and then if you look at Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC, that's very interesting. Oklahoma's in the past, even though this year they fell off just as we predicted they would. Oklahoma's had some very interesting teams over the years and lots of talent, but Texas has been a relatively strong team of late. It just throws a mix into the whole SEC thing that's very familiar, and that is that the SEC has improved their coaches.
Bob with the great segue into the SEC because I knew I was going to ask him about it. Now let's talk about Oklahoma real quick. We're going to the SEC for basketball. They had a decent team this year. They felt they were snubbed getting in. You and I didn't agree with that. We didn't think they played a very competitive non-conference slate, and they didn't. And the few teams that they played that were, decent in the non-conference they lost to. I think one of them was North Carolina. But let's talk about pressure cooker real quick. Oklahoma's going into a new conference, the SEC, which this year the SEC to me was the second best conference in basketball. We all know who I think the best is, and that's the current national
Well, it
championship
was borne
conference,
out. It was
the Big
borne out to
East.
be true.
But the SEC acquitted itself extremely well in the tournament. And it's only going to get better with the additions of Oklahoma, Texas. But let's look at hot seats real quick. Porter Moser's been there 3 years now at Oklahoma, and he used to lead Loyola to the NCAA tournament. And so far, since he's been at Oklahoma, no NCAA tournament bids. So is it a make or break year for Porter Moser in Oklahoma?
I think so.
Whereas I think Rodney, help me out at Texas. Rodney, what's his last name?
It looks like Denzel Washington.
You talking about that Shaka Smart?
No. Shaka Smart's at Marquette. It's Rodney.
Yeah, my bad.
Let me get his last name.
Yeah, I forget the new coach at Texas, but I thought he did a decent job.
I thought he did a great job this year, picking up the pieces from the guy that they had to fire because of the off the court incidents. But he got Texas to the tournament. They did well in the Big 12. They didn't win it, obviously, but they acquitted themselves well. And their big win that we surmised they would win was they went into Norman. That's a big rivalry game. And they beat Oklahoma pretty handily in Norman. I think they won that game by double digits. Rodney Terry. I couldn't remember his last name. Rodney Terry. I had Rodney, the first name right, but I couldn't get his last name. But Rodney Terry, in his first season as the head man, in Austin, they did well to make the tournament. I think they maybe won a game or two in the Big 12. So what are the expectations for Texas in the SEC next year? In a loaded SEC, by the way.
I think they'll be better than Oklahoma. I think that, slightly above average.
I mean, we're talking, the SEC got, I think, if memory serves,
what a 7
or 8 bids this year. Let me count.
Yeah.
I would argue the SEC was the best conference, even though UConn won the title.
Well, Dan Hurley tells me iron sharpens iron, so the Big East is still the best conference there. And by the way, with UConn winning last night, since the turn of the century, there are 2 conferences that stand at the top of national championships. That's the ACC and the Big East, both with 7. But as far as depth, I don't think there's a better conference. I would agree with Ed than the SEC.
I mean, besides DePaul and Georgetown, just bring the conference.
Yeah, we got to do something. DePaul killed me. I think them and they were the only one, if you count regular season and conference tournament, to not win a game. Whereas closely behind them was the Missouri Tigers, but I think Missouri won a game in the SEC tournament. And some of our listeners can fact check me on that.
Wait a minute. I heard a name for the Kentucky job this evening coming home from work, and we haven't talked about him.
Who's that?
Sean Miller.
Nah, I think he's been a criminal at Arizona. And I don't
he's
think
got a little baggage. Yeah, I think Bob's right. He's got a little baggage, and then the other thing, he's at Xavier right now, and they've really underperformed in the Big East for kind of the bill of goods that he was selling. And
because he was
good the first time at Xavier.
Yeah,
but you should be able to win at Xavier. So we did the SEC. They're getting new teams. And then the biggest thing that I think we can talk about that is going to be a game changer next year is the Arizona Wildcats joining the Big 12 to be a bulwark against Kansas. I think that's going to be very exciting in the Big 12. along with Houston, who's still that they're going to be there with Kelvin Sampson. But I think adding Arizona and a real sleeper who's doing it well and doing it kind of the opposite of their head football coach is Colorado. I think Colorado to the Big 12 is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I think Big did a
Mata the
great
coach?
job.
Well, before we go,
Yeah, what's up?
Thad Mata I thought was at Butler.
Before we go, I want to throw this out, and I just seen this today, talking about conference realignment. They're actually saying that Florida State and Clemson are coming to the SEC. Somebody's making that claim, and that the Big Ten will pick up North Carolina and Virginia, which are already compliant academically.
Are you talking about next season?
I think it'll be the season after, huh?
I was say, is there a timeline for this? And I think to add
the
to
claim
that
is
point,
coming 2025 season, I think.
Yeah, oh goodness.
Oh, and sorry, and they've got the Big 12 looting what's left of the ACC after that.
Yeah, I was right. Ed was wrong. So Thad Mata is at Butler and Sean Miller's at Xavier. So
who is
Thad Mata?
No. Sean Miller's at Xavier, but who's at Colorado?
Oh, Colorado. I'm sorry. Colorado. It's he's like it's funny. They have Dion for their football program, but for basketball, it's this kind of unheralded dude. It's Tad Boyle. And he's been there.
Okay, I got the names mixed up because it sounds Tad and Thad. But okay.
Right. Now, but Doug, to your what you just kind of broke. You and I have been talking about this for, as long as we've done the.
It's very interesting. Just the whole realignment thing is very interesting.
Sure, but I mean, you and I kind of surmised as much as, and we know a few of our listeners out there, particularly those Clemson fans, really want to go to the Big Ten. The cultural footprint is the SEC. Like, it would be weird for us, I think, if they leave the ACC, which is clearly what they want to do. It would be weird for Florida State and Clemson not to be in the SEC footprint, I think, right?
Nah, yeah, I think that's where Florida State wants to be. Clemson, I would guess they would too. Right? Yes.
Clearly after this year. I mean, Ed's our Big Ten guy. Ed, does Florida State or Clemson do anything for you as a big, they don't fit, right?
Well, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC don't fit.
Well, that's not entirely true, because you had that long time Pac-12, Big Ten, Rose Bowl kind of.
Right.
So once 1 year a game, but it's just going to make the scheduling more challenging, and the college football bracketologists are going to be debating who's number 12 with 3 losses.
Yeah, I thought that interesting, Ed. But now we got to do something to argue about who's number 12. Now we used to have to argue about who was number 2, then who was number 3 and 4. Now we're going to argue about who's number 12. So the whole thing that keeps college football alive in all our hearts is controversy, and it's going to increase by a factor of 12.
Well, a lot of years it's going to be like this, like it was this year. Oklahoma was number 12, but they wasn't getting in because it was going to be the highest ranked group of 5 team.
Yeah, so there's the controversy that we all love right there. Oh wow, they got the group of 5 team yet.
Yeah, you got to have it, and there's no way to get rid of it anyway.
I can't wait.
You have to do it so you avoid the antitrust lawsuits of you're not giving these group of 5 teams, at least you throw them a bone. Give them the only thing that I would say this year that they did a poor job of was putting Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl against who was
Oregon.
that? Oregon. And to me, even though Liberty was unbeaten, their strength of schedule compared to other group of 5s, I think it was Tulane or SMU out of the was the best group of 5 teams.
Yeah, their strength of schedule was terrible, and then we seen the result of that when they got against Oregon. So.
And that brings up one last point here. I know this is our last. That's why I'm trying to get in all the points. to one of our good listeners and good friends of the show, Landon Beeman, who pointed out that there were 2 teams this year that played the hardest non-conference schedules in the history of Ken Palm. And those 2 programs were Purdue and Alabama in basketball.
Yes, it's true.
And Landon's point, it pays, and this is why we kind of wrote off Oklahoma. And we could have written off Auburn had Auburn not done what they did during the season, during the conference season, and obviously during the SEC tournament. But it pays, and kind of what we all want as fans of the game. We want good non-conference basketball matchups, and kudos to Purdue and to Alabama for proving that it makes sense in the non-conference to schedule hard, you know. And I think
we get them, but it's always early in the season with these tournaments.
Well, no, that's not completely true. Alabama, outside of the early season tournaments, their non-conference schedule on a Tuesday, like they went to Creighton on I think it was a Tuesday night or a Friday night. That was a great game. And Creighton's coming down to Tuscaloosa next year. I might try to get.
That's more of an anomaly, though, and a lot of teams didn't do that.
They try to dodge it, but really, like what Coach Hurley said, you know, iron sharpens iron. I think that played a role in Alabama's run to the Final Four this year. It was, we've seen this team.
And was that during the conference season as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and
that's Nate Oates using his brains, saying we got to play somebody completely different to get ready for the tournament.
Right, but Oklahoma didn't. You know, their best non-conference game was North Carolina, which they lost, and then the rest was, you know, was sort of nobodies. You know,
yeah, I agree.
And so, and the great one, I give credit to Kentucky. They welcomed in Gonzaga during the conference schedule on Saturday. That was a hell of a game. I'm sorry your Wildcats lost, Bob, but
no,
thank you for giving us that game. You know, those are the games that the viewers want to watch. Now, real quick, the gripes on and the numbers are out. So last night's championship game drew 14.8 million viewers. And the big scuttlebutt is, you know, it was outdrawn by Sunday's women's championship game. And I think it's because, you know, and you guys who are on the Eastern time zone, correct me wrong, a Monday night at 9 o'clock or a little after 9 o'clock was the tip-off.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on that tip time?
I don't like it. There's 2 things in that. One of them, the tip time was late, which I'm sure everybody agrees with, right? And the second thing is, for the first time in probably 45 to 50 years, might have been longer than that, the game wasn't nationally broadcast.
Though on cable, yeah, it was on cable. It was on what, TBS, True TV, right, and TNT.
So it wasn't plausible.
They've done that before.
Yeah, but that's not really fair to a lot of viewers who don't have cable, whereas everybody has CBS.
That's right. It used to be on CBS, and you can pick it up on every TV in America that had a rabbit ear. And the fact that
the women's game, even though it was on ESPN, was also, I believe, simulcast on ABC. And everyone has the ABC.
There you go. So it's more legitimate when it's on.
18 million viewers.
Yeah, so they beat the men's game by 4 million viewers. Do things need to change for the men? Do you think they need to switch it so that maybe the women finish on Saturday and the men finish on Sunday? It's on a weekend. What do you guys think?
Well, I think they should do them both in the same day.
Oh, I think that would be great.
A double header, wouldn't that be fucking awesome?
It would be awesome.
Incredible. Yeah. So I think they have to get away from that Monday night. I think it's there are plenty of people I know that wanted to watch the game that live in the Eastern time zone, but you know, you got to go to work on Tuesday. That game finished, I think, around midnight, your guys' time?
But if you switch the men's Final Four to Friday night, you run into the same problem with a doubleheader.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be on the weekend. It's got to be on
And
the
they,
weekend.
they did the same thing with the college football national championship game. It's also on a Monday. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem too.
I do.
That's 8:00.
But at least it's 8:00. It's not a 9:00 kickoff.
Right.
I think it needs to. I think the national championship game should be a Saturday affair.
It should be. College football is played on Saturdays. The national championship games, and now there's going to be arguments. Well, now you're fighting against the NFL playoffs, but that's what the wild card round. I think there's enough people that are going to watch on a Saturday that you don't really need to
They
worry
can
about.
figure it out.
They can figure it out, but this Monday night late kind of stuff has to stop. It's
There's
there's
no
too many people
Sunday
trying to
night. There's no Sunday night NFL wild card game because they switched it to Monday. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do it then.
I think that needs to be fixed. But the one thing I will push back on was this narrative that the men's tournament, it didn't have the star power that the women's tournament had. It didn't have a Caitlin Clark, didn't have an Angel Reese. I get that, but you still had Zach Edey. You had the dominant UConn team. You had the
Burns became a star.
You had the exciting run of the Alabama program. They'd never been there. DJ Burns and NC State on the miracle run they had. The one thing that I didn't like was the narrative that the men's tournament this year wasn't good. I don't know about you guys, but I really enjoyed this year's tournament.
Oh, I did.
I enjoy every year's tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I hope from our doing this podcast throughout the season that we gain more fans for how cool the way the season plays out. November we have the different kind of holiday tournaments. Then we get into the non-conference regular season, and then we get into the conference season. Then we get to the conference tournaments, and then we have March, which to me, I'll go to my grave saying this: there is not a better tournament in the world than March Madness.
Nope,
the best.
There isn't.
I'm with it.
Me too.
And I hope we can do it again next fall, boys. I really enjoyed.
Oh, we'll definitely be doing it.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. Doug, I hope you were reinvigorated in your love for basketball.
Yes.
I watched more games, non-Alabama games this year than I typically do. So,
did you enjoy them?
Yes.
That's what we like.
Yes, I really, my favorite game that I watched was probably outside of Alabama games was the Purdue Tennessee game. But I was pulling hard.
When the schedule comes out next fall, I may come down and visit you. Creighton's playing down in Tuscaloosa. Maybe we'll go to that game.
All right.
I think it'd be fun. You guys are going to beat us, by the way. We're not going to be very good next year.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see about that. I don't carry a chip when it comes to Alabama basketball. I was ecstatic to see them get to the Final Four this year, and I think I got a chuckle earlier. A Tennessee fan had posted something the other day. How does it feel to get bounced out of the tournament by Connecticut? And I responded. I said, "You mean bounced out of the Final Four? It feels. Well, I could explain it to you, but you wouldn't know, would you? You wouldn't know what it feels like to get bounced out of the Final Four.
I was going to say you got to get to a Final Four before you can get bounced out of it.
Right?
So,
absolutely.
And don't let any. That's a casual. That's a noob. If your team goes to the Final Four, you had a hell of a season. You had a great
I agree.
season.
Yeah.
That's unless you're Bob and you're Kentucky, where you expect national championships every year. But the rest of us, a Final Four is for me as a Creighton fan is a dream. It's a goal. I hope I see it before I, leave the earth. But so I was living kind of vicariously through you, Doug, and your team, and there's going to be more great days for Alabama with Coach Oates.
It was a lot of fun, and it's irony to me that it's the one team that where he's coached Alabama that it didn't look like this would be the one.
Right. Well, that just tells you how great of a coach he is, and I think you should have high hopes, high expectations. I think the best is yet to come, as they say.
I definitely do.
Yep.
All right, guys.
Well, gents, it's been a hell of a season.
We'll be doing a special episode for Kentucky, and then we're going to talk some recruiting. So we're not quite done with balls.
With some excuses for more special editions.
That's right.
I would say maybe if we got, because we'll have some dead time in May and June, maybe we talk a little college baseball.
Let's do it.
All right,
All
gentlemen.
righty.
It's been a pleasure as always. Ed, Bob, Doug, you guys take care of yourselves.
All right.
Later, guys.
I'll be communicating.
Yeah.